Add to stream. There we go. Welcome to the Somebody Like You podcast. This topic today that we are chatting about is the power of setting boundaries for mental health and emotional wellness. As always, we like to start our podcast off with our sponsor, and that's Somebody Like You Mental Health and Emotional Wellness Coaching, where we over there like to help people along their mental health and we'll call it life journey. We're trying to help people settle in with their mental health, learn how to work through it themselves through coaching, um, with teaching and helping and guiding through practices like meditation, mindfulness, and a bunch of little tools that we over at Somebody Like You Mental Health and Emotional Wellness Coaching like to help provide our clients. For the entire month of May, which is Mental Health Awareness Month, they are offering 50% off all coaching, every service, the entire month of May. So if you want to book 10 coaching sessions in the month of May, it will all be 50% off. So if that is something you're interested in, make sure you can either comment, visit the website somebodylikeyu.org, or send a message at somebodylikeyu_mental health, or follow them on TikTok. Moving on, what is boundaries, right? Boundaries are the limits we set on ourselves and our relationships, and they are necessary. They're guidelines, right? They define what is acceptable and what's unacceptable behavior that we're going to put up with or that we're going to be able to tolerate without it being too far. And what we're going to learn in this podcast is how to communicate that effectively. We're going to learn how to dance around them. We're going to learn how to work through and communicate them with as little confrontation and resistance as we can. But that is the part of boundaries is when we get met with the resistance on our boundaries, that's kind of a red flag to begin with, right? So in relationships, boundaries help to establish healthy communication, respect, and trust between individuals. And this doesn't just have to be a romantic relationship, right? We all talk about relationships with our families, our in-laws, our coworkers, and we're going to touch on all of that throughout this podcast. We're going to talk about why boundaries are important for mental health, and it is huge. In my experience, mental health and boundaries are directly correlated. The better boundaries I have set with myself, the better boundaries I have known to set with others, right? We're going to talk about setting boundaries with friends because, believe it or not, friends overset boundaries all of the time. And we think just because they're not romantic partners or family that it's okay. But no, right? You can't. You have to set boundaries with yourself. Setting boundaries with family, as we talked about, that's something we're going to get into. And that can be a big one for the people listening to this. People joining us on TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn. If you are jumping in, you have trouble setting boundaries, just raise your hand in the comments as we're getting this thing going. I'd like to thank Rebecca and everybody jumping in here. Chris, thank you so much for being here. You guys bring all the life to the podcast, and everybody listening after the fact. Remember, we record live on Tuesdays at 11:30, and the podcast then will be up for review, listen on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, everything like that on Wednesdays. All right. We have a couple questions with us for this podcast that were asked, and they were on the topic of boundaries. And since we're talking about the topic of boundaries, I'm going to keep those questions anonymous to the user who sent them because we don't want to blow up your spot, right? So we have a good three questions that we'll be answering at then. If you're interested, they are: what are the boundaries that you set with yourself, meaning me, somebody like you? What are examples of setting boundaries with your loved ones, which has been huge for me? And this one might strike home with some of you. I live in the same area as my ex-boyfriend. We tend to go to the same spots. How do I set boundaries and navigate that situation? I'm excited to answer that one. So let's get this thing started. Why are boundaries important? We're going to explain how boundaries help maintain emotional and mental health. Remember, boundaries start with you. If you don't know your boundaries and what you will and will not accept with yourself, it's going to be impossible. And I mean impossible to communicate that effectively with somebody else. Why? Because if you're wishy-washy with your boundaries with yourself, you're going to be wishy-washy with other people. One day, people are going to be allowed to do one thing, and then when they do that the next day, it's going to have you up in arms asking and reevaluating that relationship, right? That just ain't healthy. That you just can't be doing that because it all starts with the self-care, the self-realizing, the personal journey, and the self-help and personal development. You have to go through that because if you do not, it's going to have a negative impact on your mental health, on your relationships, on your progress. So setting the boundaries with yourself starts with spending time with yourself. Uninterrupted. You're not going to be distracted by your phones, the television, your computers, all of those things, right? Even music. We have to learn how to sit with ourselves. Some people call this meditation. Some people call this mindfulness. Some people this will be yoga. Some people this will be exercise. Learn to set boundaries with yourself in those moments because that's where you're going to become and receive the most clarity. You're going to become clear there. Um, we have someone in the comments, and the specialists are Rebecca saying it's easy to set boundaries and it's hard to follow through. Right? It's absolutely true. That's the boundaries part of it, and it starts with you. If you can't set boundaries with yourself and enforce them with yourself, how are you going to do that with other people? How are we going to do that with other people? Good morning, everybody joining in here. Kelly, good morning, good morning, good morning. Remember, setting boundaries with yourself is going to be the predecessor, the precursor, maybe, to setting boundaries with other people. If you can't set boundaries with yourself of what you will and you will not accept, it's going to be impossible to do that with loved ones, coworkers, family members, anyone in your life, even a passerby, right? You have values, you have morals. And if they don't align with other people and they cross your boundaries, you need to have an escape plan and a way to respectfully bow out. So let's get this started with how we set boundaries from friends. I have somebody calling me. You're gonna have to kick rocks for the moment. Um, Setting boundaries. I'm on a podcast. I don't accept calls, and I put it on Do Not Disturb, so I thought I shouldn't be getting a phone call. Anyway, why are boundaries with friends so important? Because these are the people you go to when you have trouble with your loved ones, when you have trouble in relationships and your coworkers. These are your sounding boards. And if they cross the boundaries, then you really don't have a safe space. So how do we do that? We need to identify them first, right? We have to reflect on what's important to us. What are we comfortable with in our friendships? You know why? This is going to help you establish clear boundaries that align with your values and needs. But remember, this all starts with you discovering your boundaries. If you don't know your boundaries, all of this stuff in this podcast is going to be useless because it has to start with you. You have to go through that uncomfortable and that growth period of finding where your line in the sand is. Communicate your boundaries. This is a tough part, and this is where a lot of people struggle. A lot of people know their boundaries. They feel that in their gut, right? When somebody crosses a line or where they feel like they're being disrespected. In dating, this can be the ghosting process, right? You feel like you're being disrespected, ghosted, then the person comes back and they're like, well, no. If you are somebody who is looking for boundaries, disrespect comes in a lot of forms, shapes, and sizes, and lack of communication to you is disrespect. So you have to learn how to communicate your boundaries. It's important to communicate them because this clearly and assertively lets your friends know what you will and you won't accept. You have to let them know that you're not uncomfortable with telling them, no, this ain't me. This isn't what I do. It's not just your interactions and what your expectations are, it's who you are. Right? A lot of the times we think that we have to put on a show or we have to be a certain person with a certain set of friends or a certain relationship in our family. That's not the case. That's where we get all wishy-washy on boundaries and relationships, and communication becomes impossible because we don't know who we are because we're different amongst friend groups, family members. Now, of course, different people are going to bring out different sides of you. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about having completely different morals, values, and communication styles with different people because it can be, as I see in the comments, dysfunctional people. I'm going to let you know if you surround yourself with dysfunctional people, you are becoming dysfunctional yourself if you're not already. So learning how to communicate with this is huge. So how do you communicate with your friends and family? It's nip it in the bud, right? You have to let people know that, eh, come on, I ain't like that. It's not like that. When someone cracks an insensitive joke or makes fun of somebody or something that it crosses your line, you have to learn how to speak up. And if they meet you with um, resistance, if they meet you like, oh, stop being this, stop being that, oh, you're too sensitive. Yeah, yeah, you are sensitive. We've been taught along this way that we shouldn't be sensitive. No, that's where boundaries start. If you start feeling sensitive to things people are saying, always understand that you can respectfully bow out from that friendship. Doesn't have to be permanent, but don't feed into the things that they're saying. I have a handful of people that have disrespectfully a whole entire group of people, entire race of people, this and that, and I've how to remove myself because that's not what I stand for, right? I'm not the person who's going to condemn them, judge them, all this and that. But that's not it's not my duty to make that right for them. That's their own personal journey. What my duty is in these situations to communicate, that's not what I'm about. Hey, that's not cool. I don't like that, this and that. I don't give feedback when they crack jokes through a text message or tag in a DM or something like that. I don't acknowledge it, right? I don't give that any positive reinforcement or any reinforcement at all. So remember, that's how you can learn how to communicate. And sometimes communicating is removing your communication to send them a message. Like, no, that's not the behavior I surround myself with. And this all starts with being consistent. You can, like we talked about, setting the boundaries with yourself. It starts with consistency because when things start getting a little crazy, your consistency is going to let you know where you stand. It's the key when it comes to setting boundaries. You have to stick to your boundaries and be firm with enforcing them. That doesn't mean you be a dick. Doesn't mean that you become disrespectful. That doesn't mean that you have to judge and come down on people. That you don't want to be doing that if you are learning your boundaries yourself. You need to be kind, loving, understanding, and gentle with yourself. Same with others, but understand that being kind, loving, gentle, and understanding with others and yourself can also, well, with others, I mean this, is letting them go. Sometimes that can be the best thing you can do. And that's the part of being consistent. You can consistently say things, right? No, I'm not like that. No, I'm not like that. But if you stick around and you're enabling them to keep going and they feel like they have a platform for all of these things, you're essentially just enabling them to keep going. If you're enabling them to keep going, you're enabling them to keep going. So be consistent. And when it hits that point of like, hey, they keep doing this thing and I keep saying no, respectfully, start just taking back your energy. Stop giving it all to them. And remember this is important when it comes to setting boundaries with your friends. Do not apologize for your boundaries. A lot of us will start off with like, I'm sorry, but this makes me uncomfortable. I'm sorry that I'm sorry that, stop saying I'm sorry. Because you have a right to set boundaries to protect your well being and promote positivity, positive relationships in your life. So if you keep starting every sentence with, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, you're putting that blame onto yourself as if the things that they're saying isn't their responsibility. It's the way you interpret it is the wrong thing. There's something wrong with the way you take this. No, 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 no. They might feel like something that they're saying isn't wrong, and that's okay. But you're not the problem when you're setting boundaries. So there's no need to keep saying, I'm sorry that this is my fault, that I don't take it this way. I don't take it the right way. I was raised this way. I'm sorry. My parents, stop. These are the boundaries with yourself. Remember, all of these boundaries start with you. You have to learn to love yourself, be comfortable, confident with yourself, and know where you stand because then you're not going to be shaken by other people's stuff. You'll just easily start to know that that's not for me. I don't need to apologize for being myself because I know what I'm about. I know what I'm doing here. I don't need to surround myself with this. So while you're not apologizing for your boundaries, you can be open to compromise. It's important to set those firm boundaries. It's also important to learn how to compromise and negotiate with your friends, family members, loved ones, because it's not a dictatorship. I'm a big believer that usually happiness is found in the middle, especially when you're working with other people, because no one's going to line up perfectly on all the things, but the things that you will not accept is disrespect, right? We have a wonderful comment from Chrissy saying, change that I'm sorry to not sorry. Exactly. It's easy as just changing this. Like, I'm not sorry about this. However, I want to bring this up. However, I felt this is how that made me feel. And during that, that's when you're going to be open to compromise. And I'm trying to think of an example is if someone is using language that you don't approve of, or something like that, I'd be like, you can compromise. Be like, hey, I understand that's you. Gary Vee is a big one. A lot of people think that his language is like because he curses all the time. Maybe that can be something for somebody. Well, you don't want to stop people from being themselves, right? So it's understanding, like, you know what, like as long as you're not disrespectful, as long as you're not saying like in harmful ways, this and that, like, yeah, be you, do that. Like, we're cool with that. But as soon as it starts being demeaning to other people, to me, to my family, or anything like that, that's where we're not compromising. So you have to find, like I say, a big line in the sand for me is feeling disrespected. That's my line. If you disrespect me, my loved ones, my family members, people I care about, that's my line. And once I feel that, that's where I'm not compromising anymore. That's my direct line in the sand. And that all started with practicing self care. I had to learn what was disrespectful to me because, believe it or not, whether it be friends, family members, coworkers, loved ones, partners, you are giving them the blueprint to how to treat you. If you don't know how to treat yourself, if you constantly are disrespecting yourself, you are just giving the blueprint to everybody you come in contact with. You can't constantly be disrespecting yourself and expect everybody else to treat you with respect. This all starts with self care. Setting and enforcing boundaries is emotionally challenging. So, if you can't do that in a closed room by yourself, with yourself, how are you going to do that with a room full of people? You're not going to have the confidence to know what you will and won't accept. You have to make sure to prioritize self care. You So that can be through mindfulness, exercise, hobbies that help you manage stress and maintain emotional well being. You have to find what works for you. Some people say meditation doesn't work for me. I can't slow my mind. I can't do this. That's fine. Change the word meditation to movement or to mindfulness or to woodworking or to playing music. All self care, all quote unquote meditation is learning to observe your thoughts. All meditation is learning to observe your thoughts instead of being your thoughts. And that all starts with being in the present moment. Mindfulness, doing hobbies, playing music. It's all taking your mind out from the chaos of the world and being in this moment and watching your thoughts and not connecting and identifying as them. So remember, setting boundaries with friends, it's not about pushing people away, being difficult, anything like that. It's about respecting yourself, your needs, and building a healthier and more positive relationship with your friends. It's not easy. Yes, it is uncomfortable. Um, it gets less uncomfortable the more comfortable you get with the boundaries you set with yourself. And that starts with the self care, right? Starts with that confidence in yourself. You can't have confidence in yourself if you don't practice. Professional athletes, musicians, gymnasts, um, anybody who is proficient in everything they do just didn't get there by doing nothing, right? You have to practice these things. I think that's where we get caught up in boundaries or relationships or self-care or meditating. We just think it's supposed to come naturally to us. Understand, this is hard work. And when it starts to make you want to quit, that is the hard work. That's when hard work is setting in. Otherwise, it was just easy up to this point. Hard work is when you want to quit and be like, this isn't worth it. This isn't worth. I promise you, boundaries, self-care, love, relationships, everything like that is worth it. And you have to break through that initial wall to understand and start training your mind that you are going to be there for yourself. Because up until this point, you have not been there for yourself. Only when it's convenient have you showed up. That's a recipe for disaster. If you're only showing up for yourself when it's convenient, what do you think everybody else in this world is going to do? Sometimes your views and your boundaries might not align with other people, but that is letting you know that you don't align with these other people and things. And just because society or social media or people on podcasts or tell you you have to align with something, understand if it doesn't feel good to you, it feels like it crosses a line for you. It feels like it's not great for you. It feels like it doesn't, like I said, align. It doesn't have to be for you. Your gut, your intuition, your stomach brain, right, is telling you, I don't want to go in this direction. You have to start learning to listen to that. I want to move this to setting boundaries with family because this one's difficult, right? Friends seems more on like a casual level, but family members, there can seem to feel like an obligation to them. There's a lot of challenges when it comes to setting boundaries with family members because a lot of times we don't know any better. That's how, especially when it's immediate family, that's how we grew up, right? We grew up knowing only this. So we were conditioned from a young age to believe this is the way things are. This is the way someone acts. This is the way I'm supposed to be treated. until we get older and that dissonance really starts to build up and we either act out, lash out, anything like that. So we have some tips for setting boundaries with family members, right? We want to start small because setting boundaries can be challenging, especially with family members, because just like we talked about, they are used to certain patterns of behavior within themselves and how they treat us. So we have to start with small boundaries and work our way up as we become more comfortable. So that can be as simple as your space, right? During this time, I'm working. Please don't knock on my door, or please don't call me during this time because I'm working. Starting small, just kind of like you see how that's kind of setting a boundary, right? They're like, oh, just like during this time, like, hey, if you don't mind, don't calling on this day. Maybe I'm swamped. I just kind of like to reset myself. I'll give you a call first thing Tuesday morning. That's a boundary, and that's an easy one to set of letting people know when you are available. Understand your availability isn't for everybody at all times. You have business hours, right? Like you have hours in which you are able to give to others, but when you're available for others at all times, there needs to be a boundary put in place. And when you're starting small, you move up and you be clear and direct. This is important because when you're clear and direct with your family members, it lets them know you're not messing around. Up until this point, they might not be taking your boundaries seriously. All you can do is be clear and direct. And then if they still don't respect that, remember, you do not have an obligation to adhere to their disrespect, to be a part of it. It's not it. So you have to start small. And then when you're communicating with family members, be clear and direct. Let them know what you are and are not comfortable with in your interactions. And that can be disrespect. I have one with my dad. It's political talk. I don't talk politics. I don't like it. I don't have anything to do with it. I don't want it. I don't know, but listen, I don't want to. But no, I don't talk about it. And if they continue to talk, I disengage. I zone out because I don't want to ruin the time I'm there with my family. Right? That's not it. That's just a boundary for me. I don't talk politics. I don't like them. I think what I just don't talk 'em. Because as soon as that happens, I start getting you can almost feel yourself building up, right? Like you want to get loud, you want to puff your chest. Like, I don't have a horse in this race. I think it's all corrupt. I don't want to talk about this, right? And I have some people in the chat saying that they feel that way with their dad. They feel that way with their family members. It's tough. But you know what happened? And my dad has 100% respected my boundaries. Once or twice, he might be like, "Hey, I saw this, blah blah blah," but I don't engage. He doesn't push it because I was clear and direct. Hey, I don't talk about this. I don't talk about this. This isn't something I don't give my energy to that because the more energy I give to that, the less energy I have to give to the things I love to do, the things I'm good at, the people I'm helping, myself. And I'm so thankful that he was able to respect that boundary. And it's okay, when you feel obligated to call out things from them too. Um, the only challenge I have on that would be the term calling out, um, because that makes it seem like one person's right and one person's wrong. And this is the thing for me. This is what I get backlash on a little bit is I say no one's wrong and no one's right. There's things that are morally right for me and morally right for others. But you're not going to change other people's perception. Like I feel like we kind of got from a young age, it was always like I have to prove I'm right to things. Once I dropped that, that was a boundary for me. I had to set a boundary for myself that I do not have to prove myself and my views. Yeah, no, and so when it comes to like racism and stuff like that, I will agree with that. I do say I'm like, "You can't talk like that. You don't like, that's not it." And a big thing like, when they say, "Oh, well, I don't mean it," I think, "Well, you know what? Intentions mean a lot of things. Words carry a lot of weight." Um, it takes just even putting an effort to not say things like that, to not use names like that is a sign of respect, right? And a lot of times we'll get hit with the, "Well, that's just the way it used to be. That's just the way people talked back when I was a kid," or this and that. Yeah, when people unfortunately didn't know any better. We now know and have seen things that have happened. Put a little bit of respect in it, you know? So I can understand with that. Um, Another way, and on this topic, right? It's how you communicate these boundaries with family members. And the big key is to say, stay calm and stay assertive. When you're setting boundaries, it's important to stay calm and assertive in communication. You have to avoid becoming defensive, angry, and all those type of things. And you have to focus on expressing your needs in a clear and respectful manner. I look at it as whether it be a sports coach or a gymnastics, music coach, or music instructor, or anything like that. How you communicate with somebody is going to dictate how they act. If you're abrasive and tell them to shut the fuck up, and you tell them to do all this kind of stuff, and you're like, sit your ass down. This is the way it is now. Do you think that's going to get anything across that you want to get across? Because you were just abrasive. Now you have somebody on their heels and they feel like they need to fight back. So everything you're trying to communicate is now out the window. So you have to stay calm but remain assertive. So what are some ways? Hey, when you talk like that, like it just makes me uncomfortable. I'm not about it. And when they come back with something like, no, no, if you find that talking like that is more important than me feeling comfortable and staying here, like I'm okay. Like I'll go home. I'm good. Like, and when they try to puff their chest or say, oh, you're being this, you're being that, that's where we're clear and direct, and when we put our feet in the sand and we leave. It's just like a dog trying to get away with stuff, or like we have to show that we mean what we say. It's like, "No, I'll leave. It's okay. No harm, no foul. Like, I'm out. See you later." It's okay. Remember, how you stay calm in this situation is going to dictate how effectively you're able to communicate. It's really hard because your emotions are gonna get worked up too, but in the beginning of every conversation, in the beginning of everything you do, what is your intention? This is something I've been practicing with myself. When I'm doing things or setting out goals for myself, what are my intentions? If my intention is to make a podcast, create a podcast that is an inclusive environment that helps people with their mental health who are on spiritual journeys, that are trying to find more of alignment and harmony with themselves, I'm doing things that are in service of that. So if I get on here and I start spewing off political views and I start pushing an agenda that I feel like I have, or this and that, that's not in service of the harmony of a podcast, giving people a safe space to listen, better themselves, and all of those things. So if you're having a boundary setting conversation with somebody, what is your intention to set that boundary? How are you going to go about it? Because you know damn well if you start yelling at somebody and you start doing, it's not going to get it, because now you're coming from a place of fear, aggression, and anger, where what you're really trying to get out of this is respect, calmness, and harmony, right? I know it almost seems too easy and too simple to be like, oh, well, when you say it like that, yeah, when you say it like that, it is a lot easier said than done, because we never thought of it that way. It's like, oh, usually I just act out of reaction. I let my emotions dictate where I'm going. No, I promise you, if you set intentions before you do things, all of a sudden your mind understands, well, that's not going to get me what those intentions were. That's not going to get me that. That's going to, if anything, I'm going to be fighting myself, because now I just dug myself a hole by yelling at these people. As a man sits here and yells into a microphone about how people should set boundaries with family and friends. Oh man. And so when we said, right, if somebody was going to jump into the, oh, well, this and that, blah, 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 it's enforce your boundaries, right? We said, if we're going to leave and they keep talking like that, you have to leave, right? That's like in a relationship when someone keeps pushing them, oh, we're going to break up, this and that. If you keep doing that, I'm going to leave you, I'm going to leave you. And then no one leaves. Well, nothing's ever going to change because there's no consequences to an action, right? So if you say, like, hey, if you keep talking to me like that, like, I'm out. I'm just going to go home. Have a good rest of your day. I'm okay. I'm very confident and comfortable with who I am, but I don't sit here through that. That's just not what I do. And then when that happens and then you leave and they have something to say, keep acting in the service of your boundary. Be like, "Hey, didn't we just talk about how I don't do that. I don't listen to that?" You'll find out real quick the people who are selfish in their relationships with you. That's all about them. It's not a two-way street. There's no energy exchange between the two of you. You have to enforce the boundaries consistently. You have to be firm, you have to enforce your boundaries, and don't waver on when family members push back. Remember, you are strong. Like, even if it's a parent, a sister, a cousin, an aunt, an aunt, or whatever, like, understand that you are powerful for yourself. You don't have to hold power over other people. And what they are doing is holding power over you or feeling like they do. Once you set those boundaries with yourself and you understand who you are and you're 10 toes deep in that sand of knowing what you are about, no one holds power over you anymore. No one. Boundaries set that expectation of you do not own me. You do not have power over me. I, I I'm the runner of this show. I don't answer to that. I don't interact with that. Like, if you're fighting for my attention and using it in disrespectful ways, that attention is mine. My attention is currency. I'm not going to spend it on this. I'm not going to pay my attention to this. I'm going to spend my time as it is currency on things that I'm going to get a better investment out of. Does that make sense? The whole pay attention and spend time analogy? Because that was big. That was big on me. Um, And just like with setting boundaries with friends, you have to prioritize and practice self-care. Just because, you may have done some self-care for a little bit, and then all of a sudden you got a couple clear boundaries, which is pretty dope, right? Well, you have to continue the self-care. Because when you prioritize self-care, like mindfulness, exercise, hobbies that help you manage stress, yoga, whatever it might be for you, remember this all looks different to everyone else as a self because it's called self-care. Um, it has to become a normal practice for you. A little bit of what it looks like for me is in the morning. I'll repeat some, whether they be you call them affirmations, or I like to say I like to harmonize with myself. I like to harmonize with my goals and my intentions. So a few of mine are I am happy and I am present minded, right? I have one that I am healthy in mind, body, and soul. And when I say these things, when I say I'm happy and when I'm healthy in mind, I stop and I feel my mind. I know that it can be hard for some people to be like, oh, what does my mind feel like? I feel I have this connection, and it's been a long time coming, a lot of hard work, but when I say mind, I feel like a light bulb or like a room light up, and it's my mind. And I go, I feel healthy in my mind, my body, and I feel tingling throughout my entire body because I connect my mind and my body now. So now it's like I'm just firing on all cylinders. Because remember, the point of affirmations isn't just to say shit. The point of affirmations is to feel this as if it already is. And when you can start feeling this stuff, magic is happening. And then when I say soul, it's like I'm just connected with every single thing that has ever existed, will exist, and is existing right now. And it might seem like, wow, all that in like 4 seconds. Yes, it's that powerful. And then throughout the day, I'll continuously say it to myself. Whenever I'm having like a moment of like, I always call it a moment of dissonance. Having a moment of distance where I feel really disconnected, where I'm either watching something or I said something or someone said something to me. When I say that, I come back to my affirmations, my harmonizing with myself, because that's what is your boundary setting. I'm setting the boundary. I am happy. I'm present minded. Now, I might not always be happy, right? That's something I'm working through as a boundary with myself. I'm not always going to be happy. So I'm like, I'm happy and present minded. Well, if I'm not happy, that affirmation ain't it. But I'm always present minded. I'm always looking for what is a lesson in this moment. What is good? Because that brings me joy. That brings me happiness. So remember, what self-care those are my self-care things. Like, I also, like, obviously, I meditate, I exercise, all of those things, but how you are talking to yourself and how you are treating yourself, how you are prioritizing your self-care is the number one boundary because you need boundaries with yourself. All these boundaries with family members, with coworkers, with partners, they don't mean a damn if you don't have boundaries with yourself because one day it could be one thing and another day they're gonna do the exact same thing and it's gonna throw you up in arms. That's not fair to them, and it's damn well not it's not healthy and good for you. So remember, all of this when we're talking about boundaries with friends, family, lovers, partners, coworkers, it all starts with the boundaries and the limits you put on yourself. When I say limits, I don't mean limiting beliefs and all that. It's the things you will and you will not accept. This is a hard one, because coworkers can often feel like they are a requirement of where you work and all these things, but that's Setting boundaries in a place of work is massive, especially with bosses, with managers, with your coworkers themselves, if they're whether they're a lateral move or anything like that. You have to set clear work hours. And I know that's hard. People be like, "Oh, well, I'm just another pawn in this scheme," right? No, you're not. You are a human working at a place for employment for a currency to pay the bills in which you need to live and stay in. They do not own you. They do not have the right to treat you however they want, and you work whenever they tell you to work. You have to jump because they told you to jump. You don't do that. You set clear work hours. You communicate those work hours in a respectful way and stick to them as much as possible. Now it's okay to help people out. If you have a really good relationship with people and you say, "Hey, this time I'll work it out, but understand that in the future, this isn't something I do. I don't just jump on the laptop or jump into the office whenever someone snaps their finger. These are my work hours, but I'm happy to help out this time." Try to avoid taking your work calls or responding to emails outside of those hours. Now, if you're someone like me who is kind of running their own gig, and sometimes it can be all encompassing, that's when it's almost most important. So this isn't so much a coworker. This is like setting a boundary with you and your business. I know a lot of the people on here, a lot of people listening are business owners themselves. And sometimes I know you can relate that there isn't a boundary between you and your business because everything you have goes into growing this, right? Well, if we're not setting boundaries with our business is going to overtake who we are. And that's not why we're doing it. We have to set those. Well, we are our coworkers. We have to set boundaries with ourselves. We set personal boundaries, right? That's the self-care, those things. Now we need to set professional boundaries with ourselves too. So whether it's a coworker, a manager, a boss, a director, a CEO, or yourself with your business, you have to communicate with yourself and others your clear work hours. Doesn't mean you won't respond to an exciting email or an email that requires immediate attention. None of this. But the more you're consumed with all of this stuff is the moment you feel like you're losing yourself, that you are all of these things, that you are your job and they don't. Because the second point in setting boundaries with coworkers is learning how to say no. It's okay to say no to a request or a project that falls outside of your job description, outside your scope of work. Remember, you read that job description, you jumped in with them, and you said, "Yeah, I'll do this." And then all of a sudden, things start piling up. You have to learn how to say no. You have to learn how to say, "I don't feel comfortable doing this. I have a full load. I have a full workload right now. I don't have the capacity to do this inside of my working hours, which are 9 to 5, 10 to 6, whatever they may be." But remember this, whether it's talking to yourself or talking to others or your manager, coworkers, what be respectful. This doesn't have we kind of grew up, and I can speak at least my we grew up in a thing in an age where everything was an argument. Everything had to be from a place of negativity, like I know better, you don't know what I'm going through, or you don't know how it feels. Like, no, it's okay to be respectful to people. It's okay to be like, "Hey, I understand you need to get this done, and I'm willing to work on solutions to help you get that done, but I can't be the main player in this game." Right? There's some that compromise we talked about. Isn't that crazy? How you can compromise with people and say like, "Hey, your work does matter to me, but this is my limit. I don't have it. But I'm willing to help you find brainstorm with you an alternative solution if that might help. But I can't be the person leading this project, doing this project. I'm at full capacity. Unless you're looking to prioritize some of my workload to help with this, maybe a couple of these things can go to somebody else and I can take that on. I'm more than happy, but I don't have that wiggle room to add something right now. Another great way is to limit your personal information with people. Don't share too much with everybody. And now this can be for like obviously legal reasons or whatever, but could be used against you. But also remember, like you want to keep part of yourself to yourself. I mean, I try to be as open and honest as I can on a podcast at somebody like you, but understand there's a level of like my relationships, my friendships, and stuff like that. I keep to myself because they are me. I love that. That's a boundary I set for me. Is I don't want to broadcast all of my stuff to the world. I want to let in as much as I feel comfortable doing, but I don't want people to know every conversation I have with my mom or my fiance or anything like that. If I'm going through a hardship or they're going through hardships, I might try to create content around that stuff. But my boundary with whether I would say my community or the people that I'm going to be reaching out with and coaching with, there's a boundary that you need to set for yourself, and that's limit your personal information because whether it be used against you or this and that, understand that there's a part of you that's just for you, and that's for you to decide. Um, take breaks. Take breaks during your day. Take your vacations. Take your sick days. Take mental health days, as we talked about before. You have to take regular breaks. Like I said, throughout the workday, throughout the work week, throughout the work year, you have to recharge and prevent burnout. That's how you set boundaries and how you spend your break time. And don't do work related tasks during your break. If you're on vacation, be on vacation. If you're on a lunch break, you're on a lunch break. Recharge. Remember, everything's intention. Remember, you're setting intentions. So why am I taking this 30-minute to an hour lunch break? It's to disassociate myself from work real quick. I need to recharge. I need to go have a salad. I need to go for a run. I need to go do these things. Be where you are. And that's, remember, we talk about being mindful, practicing meditation. Be where you are. If you're not at work, don't be at work. If you're in your room meditating, be in your room meditating. If you're watching TV with your fiance, be watching TV with your fiance. You are not the things that are on the television. You are not the job that you are at. You are the person that is there. You are the awareness in which is there. So I say when I'm watching TV, it could be mindful TV with my fiance, I'm not there for the shows. I'm there to spend time with my fiance. That's my intention. So when I'm there, I'm not all consumed in the gossip or whatever is on television. I'm enjoying the moments I'm spending with the people I love. And that's my break time. um, and just with everything else, communicate assertively and effectively, respectfully, all of those things. Because if you're not, it's like repeating ourselves, right? If you're aggressive with somebody and disrespectful to them, you're going to get aggression and disrespect back. And you're going to wonder why people don't understand your boundaries. It's because you spent the entire time talking about boundaries, you were arguing with each other about why you're more important than them, why your boundaries are more important than who they are. There's a big difference. There's a big difference between you're going to shut up and listen because this is what I will and won't accept. And hey, sometimes when we talk about this, like it just kind of makes me feel uncomfortable. I know that can be kind of hard to hear. Um, but I just felt I wanted to tell you that because if this kind of keeps going, I might just have to distance myself a little bit. Um, see how different that is? Instead of shut the hell up and listen to me kind of stuff. Like, remember, you can communicate assertively with being respectful. And remember that setting your boundaries with coworkers, your business self, or whoever it might be, is about creating positive and productive work environment for yourself and others. Um, it's really hard to like where you are, love the things you're doing, love the people you're doing it with. If is in a place, I keep saying dissonance, right? Because I think that word resonates with me. Yes, I may because like you said, it's how you talk about stuff. I may have to distance myself. It's a lot better than getting the fuck out of here. Like, so these boundaries are important because you're trying to harmonize with your goals and your intentions. Everything that is not in harmony, is not in alignment, is not in service of those things, you're essentially fighting yourself. A little trick I do, um, I don't know if it's a trick or maybe it's just something I kind of believe or however you want to take it, that's for your interpretation. But I look at family members, friends, coworkers, and stuff as versions of myself that um, may not, in setting boundaries standpoint, may not be like understanding. So it's like, um, I use my dad as like we talk. I say I don't talk politics. I just don't talk politics. Well, if my dad's talking politics, I look at him as a version of myself that would be as if I did talk politics, and I don't like that version of it. So how would I talk to me? Well, if I start yelling at myself and telling me to shut up, I don't want to talk about this, that version of me is going to tell me to shut up. But if I'm like, hey man, like How would I want to be talked? It's, oh, how would you want to be talked to? Hey, man, like I get it. This is important to you, and you saw something that really like riled you up, and you might want to talk about it. But unfortunately, like, that's not in my wheelhouse. That's not something like I relate to. I feel comfortable even talking about. Like it gets me riled up, and I don't like feeling that way. So like I get it. Like I want to respect that you saw something, but it ain't me, right? And all of a sudden you're like, oh, wait a second. Huh. All these things make sense. Whether it be like religious sayings, spiritual sayings, anything like treat others as you want to be treated unto you. Like I don't know the direct word verbiage, but you know what I mean? Like all these sayings or cliches are for a reason. They make sense. Like, oh no, I'm going to treat others as if they are myself or a version of me that might be like disconnected from myself because whether we're all one, right? You can believe that, you can believe something else, but like that's something like, oh, we are all one. I'm going to treat others as if they are me, a version of me that is kind of coming to me in a way of like, yeah, I need to talk to him a little bit. That's not what I'm at. Letting that version of me know, like, hey, we ain't that. That's boundaries. That's boundaries, my friend. Now, with setting boundaries, there are barriers. So, how do we overcome barriers while setting boundaries? First, you need to practice your self awareness. Start by becoming more aware of your own needs and boundaries. The self care we talk about, right? Are you finding a theme to this podcast yet? Self care. It starts with you. Without, excuse me, without understanding your boundaries, you're not going to be able to communicate and set boundaries with others. Become self aware because this is going to help you identify where you need to set limits with others. And a big one is you need to identify your triggers. This isn't just waiting for emotions to rise up, it's being the observer of when your triggers arise. Recognize the situations or behaviors that trigger you to overextend yourself or compromise the boundaries you've set. This is going to help you be more proactive with setting limits. So, triggers can be stuff of a big trigger for me in past relationships were not being communicated with, being told I was going somewhere, I'll let you know when I get there, not being talked to for a few days. Lack of communication was a trigger for me because this or that may have happened while I wasn't being communicated with. They were spending time with someone that they promised me they wouldn't be spending time with. Your mind can start running, right? And all of those things, triggers for me. So in my relationship now, I understood those triggers and communicated them in a calm, respectful, and understanding manner because what has happened to me is not the other person's responsibility, right? It's not, they didn't do it to me. And if they did, it's because, and I got triggered, it's because of my past. So all I can do now is communicate effectively, lovingly, and respectfully. So once you know your triggers, it turns into the beautiful and graceful art of how to communicate them. And we talked about before, it's starting small because boundaries can be really overbearing, really daunting. So if you start small, it's just like with learning a new instrument. I have a piano back there, right? I started learning in what I think it was January. Started small. And the amount of growth that happens when you don't expect to play Beethoven or Queen or something like that your second week, all of a sudden the third, fourth week come in, you are so much more proud of yourself and you want to keep doing these things. So same with boundaries. Start small. Set those little boundaries, like I said, with it, whether it be parents or family members, coworkers. Hey, these are my office hours. Remember, you, like I said, you have office hours. You are not open and available for everybody at all times. That is unhealthy, no matter who they are. You have to have office hours for yourself, right? So start small. Be clear and direct. Be clear and direct. So when you're communicating your boundaries, be clear, direct, and assertive. Avoid being vague or passive because when you're vague or passive, that's like a dog. I always say humans and dogs are not so different. We're going to do what we can get away with, whether we know we're being that way or not. How we see consequences or how consequences are brought to us or when they're how do you train a dog? It has to be consistent, right? Same with setting boundaries. If you're one day like, oh no, that's okay, and the other day you're like, I will not tolerate this. There, That's not setting a boundary. That's not knowing what the hell you're doing. That's not knowing how you feel. You haven't spent time with yourself. So being clear and direct isn't just for these other people. Being clear and direct is with yourself. Like I said, when something is deemed disrespectful to me, and I know instantly, it's not like, oh, well, when some person does this, that's disrespectful. When they do this, or another person does this, that's not disrespect. No, I don't label everything as like, this is, this isn't, this is, this isn't. It is a feeling for me. It is a gut feeling where, like, I know I have felt this, and that is the feeling of disrespect. I don't do this. And that's what I challenge people to understand is tap into those feelings. And that's what are going to help your boundaries so much. Practice your self-care, do your mindfulness, do your meditation, go for walks in nature, go for walks wherever you can, learn a new instrument, play a piano, like do a hobby, find something that works for you that brings you to the present moment, that brings you joy, that brings you peace, that lets you spend time with yourself uninterrupted from other things, that you're not attached to a screen or anything, right? Learn to spend time with yourself. And a big one, seek support. You have therapists, you have counselors, you have coaches, right? I'm a mental health coach. I talk to clients all the time about this stuff. I just brought on 2 new clients in May for relationships and how to communicate in relationships, setting boundaries. Where do you think the theme of this podcast came from? I draw from things that I talk about in coaching sessions. I look at it this way. Support, help is one giant tree, right? And there are so many branches and leaves on this tree. So find the branch in the tree that feels good for you, that aligns with your budget. As a coach, I recommend therapy and therapists and hypnotherapy and mediumship readings, all of those things that help people heal, right? And that's the healing tree. So find the support for you. Sometimes people don't have $170 to go to therapy every single week, but they can afford coaching sessions. Self plug, month of May, Mental Health Awareness Month. I 50% off all of my coaching every session because it's Mental Health Awareness Month. Some people just need help, right? Sometimes we don't have the budget. So find support and find the people that work for you. Celebrate your successes too. If you don't celebrate yourself, I made a post the other day and it was, if you don't take time to thank yourself, it's going to be a thankless job. Well, if you don't take time to celebrate yourself, celebrations are going to come far and few in between. Imagine if you celebrated your little successes. I celebrate myself after every podcast. You know how much joy this brings me? Do you know how much I love doing this? How much I love being here to help people talk about the tough things that no one wants to talk about? I love Do you know how much I love setting a space where people can listen and learn stuff? Like this is the joy of my life. After every podcast, I will shut this off. I will take 3 deep breaths and I will be and practice my gratitude and be I'm so grateful that I was able to do this. I'm so grateful I was able to connect with people. So what are you celebrating for yourself? What is the little success are you going to celebrate today? It doesn't have to be you won man or woman of the year award, you're in Time magazine. This you could have had a really good maybe you have a newborn and you had a flawless feeding session this morning and you knocked it out of the park. Celebrate that shit. Maybe you communicated some boundaries with your significant other, a family member, a coworker, and it went well. Even if it didn't went well, but you took the leap to set a boundary. Celebrate that shit. These little things you just need to celebrate yourself. Because if you're not celebrating yourself, no one's going to celebrate for you. All my business owners, right? All my coaches, all my therapists, hypnotherapists, my mediums, all of those people. You understand if you don't celebrate yourself, no one's going to celebrate you. Now we've got a couple quick questions. The fan questions from my Instagram I posted. I said, what are some questions related to boundaries that you have for me that you'd like me to answer on the podcast? Question number one are what are the boundaries I set for myself? And I think I kind of touched on them throughout the podcast, so I'll quickly go over right now. The boundaries I set for myself is I will not accept disrespect or what feels to be disrespect. I know that can feel kind of broad, but it's not for me because I know what disrespect feels like for me. I know that I won't except somebody talking to people we agreed not to talk to, um, for relationship health, right? Because that has happened in the past, and that's something I was like, you know what? I've been the whole nice guy of, yeah, no, you can talk with your ex, that's fine, multiple times, and I got burnt. That's just something that's not for me, right? And that's okay if it works for other people. I'm not saying, but these are my boundaries. Another question was, what are examples of setting boundaries with your loved ones? We touched on this a little bit. I think I just answered these questions that I was going through. But setting boundaries with my loved ones, like I said, the politics one. I don't talk politics with my family, with anybody. It's not for me. And if someone's disrespecting me in that moment, and I know it's going to be like a passing moment, I zone out. Right? If you're watching the podcast live or on my YouTube channel, somebody like you, you see, I start zoning out. Like, hey, over here. No, not over here. We talked about this. I respectfully don't give a shit about what you're talking about. You know what I mean? Like, if you're not going to respect my boundaries, I don't have any obligation to tune in here. And this last question was a big one. It was actually asked to me a couple months ago, a month ago, I would say. And I live in the same area as my ex-boyfriend. We tend to go to the same spots. How do I set boundaries and navigate that situation? That's tough, right? Um, if you guys still talk, I would say, hey, when we're out, this and that, like, I wish nothing but the best for you. But if I see you out, I don't really want to talk, right? I might go somewhere else. But understand, like, there's no hard feelings. We're moving on, this and that. But this ain't for me. Um, you have to be able to communicate even with an ex. And if you're not talking with your ex and you get there, maybe your is with yourself. Hey, if they're here that night, this isn't where I am. And if you're with a group of people and they're with a group of people and your friends are like, no, this is where we're going tonight. You have to talk to yourself, right? Maybe go make a bathroom visit and sit there and be like, I need to check in with me. I need to check in with how I feel about this. Am I okay? Because if I can get through this without like feeling like I want to yell or if I want to get into a fight or if I want to do all these things, then I'm good. But if I feel like this is really dissonant and I feel like I'm really going to be having a hard time, maybe I just respectfully go somewhere else tonight. But it all starts with having that conversation with you and knowing how you feel. Because I mean, just like with anything, you can feel a certain way up until that point, and then the moment comes, you're like, I don't feel like how I thought I would. Check in with yourself. Talk to yourself. Um, Listen to your intuition because that is going to be the thing that guides you. Don't let your emotions get in the way and let past get in the way. The relationship ended for its reasons. Understand that it is still ended, and you're just going to have to assess at that moment in time. And maybe having a simple maybe you remove yourself from the situation that time, and then you have an easy conversation with them. In the best case scenario, right? I understand it's not always peaches and cream, but that is it. Those were the questions. And I always like to end with my podcast of always saying, if you need any help, I am here. Like I said, I do mental health and emotional wellness coaching. Um, the entire month of May, 50% off all of my coaching. Doesn't matter how many sessions you want in May, all of the sessions are 50% off. I'm trying to do my part for mental health awareness. I'm trying to be there for as many people as I possibly can. Um, I've had a wonderful outpouring of love, support, and new clients in the month of May because of this, and I just want to continue to give back as much as I can. So whether you're listening on Instagram, TikTok, Spotify, anything like that, if you're on Spotify, you can find my links in the description. You can send me a DM there. You can send me a message on my website, somebodylikeyou.org. Somebodylikeyou.org. I almost messed that up. Um, so yeah, remember boundaries are super important. If you need help with them, I am here to help you with them. Um, Prioritize the self-care. Prioritize the boundaries with yourself because that is where you're going to learn where your boundaries start and where they stop. So everybody who tuned into this podcast, I want to thank you so much. I want to thank you, the sponsor of this podcast, somebody like you, Mental Health and Emotional Wellness Coaching, for all the help you do with everyone else and helping everyone on their mental health and emotional journeys. If I'm catching you on the live, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for all your comments. I was able to check them as I was going. Thank you so much for being here, being you, and doing all the things you do to help your own mental health, your own journey. And if you're catching this on the recording, be sure to check out my previous podcast because I think they may help you too. All right. I'm going to send love to everybody, and I will catch you on the next one. Somebody like you, out.